Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway, here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. This week, after our last week's episode where we talked about why you're not saving for retirement, even if you really want to, I decided to take the thought process a few steps further and look into the subject of procrastination.
Yeah, so again, this is kind of one of those like unofficial second parters because procrastination can have a big impact on what you do with your finances, whether you invest, whether you save for retirement, whether you make the right decisions, because you just don't want to some days.
Well, and not just don't want to, there are certain elements that build into these decisions that we make often on a subconscious level. So I read a couple books this past week, and one of them was my favorite by a mile, The Procrastination Equation by Piers Steel, written in 2010.
And the second book will not be mentioned.
The second book will not be named. I actually read the second one first and wish I hadn't. I wish I would have had a little bit more time. Maybe I was procrastinating there a little bit too much as we try and read these things in the middle of the night when the kids are finally sleeping on this one. But this has a few of my favorite elements built into it. There's some math involved, and there's some really good behavioral psychology. And the author has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, which he says is the scientific study on our actions and minds in the workplace. So very, very relevant, not just in the world of personal finance, but for anyone really trying to hit a meaningful goal and are finding that they're in their own way.
That's right. A real degree from a real person, despite what the name may sound like.
That's right. Names aside, the author had some incredible points, and he started out by defining procrastination. So as we know, it comes from that Latin word in favor of tomorrow, but by his definition, it occurs when we're voluntarily putting off a task that makes us in a position where we're actually worse off by doing this thing. So we procrastinate. When we procrastinate, the very act of procrastination is us working against our own best interests and kind of blocking our access to our own best selves and our own best outcomes.
Yeah, it's like kind of ongoing battle between what I should do and what I want to do. Like today, I went outside and did the yard work instead of having a nap on the couch.
You know what? That nap sounds pretty good, especially with our busy lives and a couple kids and work and everything. But the yard looks great too, so I suppose I can't complain too loudly, mostly because you were the one doing the hard work today. So thank you for that, Cam. So let's look into the author's 3 factors of procrastination. And this is where I love it because there are factors and then they turn into a formula when you put them all together.
Oh, can I guess what the formula is? Is it the reasons I should do it times 0?
Oh my goodness. We need some positive momentum here, so I'm going to say no to that one.
Inner motivation divided by 0.
Oh man. Well, intrinsic or external, right? Motivation can absolutely come from inside of us, or it can come from something outside of us, like wanting to keep our job or just keeping the house tidy, getting the chores done. But let's look at the factors that the author laid out regardless of the cause or regardless where this task is coming from. The first was something he called expectancy, and he defined it as what you expect to have happen. So this is, what is the outcome? Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Is this task something that you have a competency for? Is it something that's going to be difficult? And he said that once this expectancy is in place, if it's negative, it can be much harder to motivate yourself to continue or to pursue the task.
Yeah, this is kind of the hopeless part of procrastination, where you don't think something is worthwhile, it's not worth your time, it's not going to fix anything, so why bother putting the calories to work to get up and deal with that thing? If you got a bad expectation, it's a lot harder to motivate yourself, whereas we'll see later, if you have a good expectation, it is marginally better to motivate yourself and not to procrastinate things.
Well, yeah, and I think that the point with expectancy is it can go both ways. It's not inherently good or bad. It's what we assign to it that makes it so. So expectancy can be positive, and that can create a positive momentum or a positive expectation or the hope of a positive outcome.
Yes, I've got a yard of dirt in my front yard, and my expectation is to get even hotter in a couple of days. So my expectation is I should get it done with now when it's only 20 degrees, not 30 degrees.
So that brings us to the next variable, which is time. The pressure of a deadline, so your hot sun and a hot summer day, is very much a motivating factor. And it's funny when you think about this in terms of longer term goals, it can be easy to lose those deadlines because they seem so far away. So time, the length of time between where we stand now and when you would fundamentally have this task completed is what he's referring to here. And lastly, value. Value is really the concept that we tend to put off what we don't like. So the question to ask yourself when you're assigning a value to something is, how do you feel about what you're putting off right now? What are you procrastinating on and how do you feel about it? So value could actually be viewed in this context as a measure of enjoyment. Or you could state it in a way that says the less value you assign to something, the harder you will find it to be to do that task.
Yeah, to kind of follow back up to last week, people could have a low value in a budgeting, or they just want to spend now and not worry about saving for tomorrow. And what do you actually think is worthwhile is going to help you determine what you do. It's something we've kind of talked about a few different times, but what you assign your value to is what you're going to spend your money on.
Oh, absolutely, because you'll be focusing on the things that give you the most enjoyment. And I mean, if you think about these three metrics and you apply them to your finances, things like getting out of debt or figuring out if you have enough money saved for your retirement or even having to redo your budget, how do you feel? Like if you feel that outcome is going to be negative, that's expectancy. That's a negative expectancy that's already kind of putting you maybe in the crosshairs of procrastination. If you ultimately dislike these types of tasks, organizing your finances, looking at your debt, evaluating if you've had enough saved or what else you have to do, that's that value piece. That dislike, again, can be on the negative side of this as a disincentive that will make it more likely that you will procrastinate on this organization or this debt management or this retirement planning later because we put off something that we tell ourselves we do not like. And finally, time. We talked about this one quite a bit in last week's episode. If there is no assigned metric of time to what you're trying to achieve, or if it's so far in the future that it's kind of irrelevant to you today, like retirement is generally defined by age, and if you're young and that age seems far away, it's hard to pull that present into a reality today. So if there's no goal, no deadline, no goalposts, no intermediate goals along the way to mark your progress that are actually achievable in a much shorter time horizon, your motivation can decrease substantially as well. And your consistency, the consistency that you'll need to hit a big goal like retirement can dwindle, right? Because you need something to grab onto to push you forward and to continue to push yourself forward if this is going to take 10, 20, 30 plus years.
Yeah, it's kind of the dichotomy of time. It is either so far away you don't really notice it, or it's right up in front of you telling you it's here and time is now.
Well, and isn't it funny how our experience of time changes and moves, where something seems exactly like you said, Cam, far, far, far away into the very distant future, and then suddenly it's here. And we look at each other and we say, where did the time go? And it all felt like a dream. It happened so quickly. And it kind of forms those memories that we hope to enjoy and carry with us for years to come. But in this context, the author did something really cool that I liked. He came up with formulas and he called them expectancy theories. And I mean, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I love a good formula. So if you can combine behavioral psychology with a little bit of math, I'm in my happy place. And that is where this kind of all came together for me. So let's start with something very simple, and it kind of builds over time. So bear with us as we progressively work through this to its completion as we build on this example. He starts off with something he called the expected utility theory. which is that people make their decisions by multiplying expectancy and value together. So this part of the equation is very simply that, expectancy times value. Let's define that. What does that actually mean? It means we are making our decisions on how likely we feel we will get a positive outcome in anticipation of a good outcome multiplied by how much value we assign to this.
Yeah, I guess another way you can look at it is how happy are you about this thing that's coming in, and then how much does it mean to you? The expectation and the value is these two things kind of coalescing together, but both of them kind of have to be positive to motivate you to kind of get off the couch and do something or do that project or whatever it is. Do you see something good coming out of this effort, and does it hold enough value to make the effort worth it?
Well, and I think he was trying to define why people do what they do. And I mean, if you think about it as like a time-wasting activity, like think about doom scrolling. This is kind of what it spoke to me. If I am mindlessly scrolling on my phone and it's late at night, I'm doing something that I find enjoyable. I know I'm going to find memes or little videos that are going to make me laugh or smile. So my expectancy is for a positive outcome. And the value is high for me because, like I said, I'm laughing, I'm smiling, I'm enjoying it, even if it's a giant waste of time and I could be reading books about procrastination. So even if I'm wasting my time, because I know that this activity will give me a positive experience, that's why I do it. And this is what we're competing against for the tasks that actually will improve our lives.
Yeah, we have very different reasons for doom scrolling. I tend to doom scroll because I'm looking for all the different bad decisions people have made that are making my job a lot harder.
Well, there's no shortage of that in the news cycle these days. The media, the politics, the markets, they are making it very, very, very challenging. And of course, Cam, your research process is second to none. So it's really, really interesting to watch you slowly lose your mind a little bit to this, but ultimately...
Oh, it's not slow anymore.
Well, it's coming at the speed of the news cycle, right? So, but ultimately, you give us some really good and timely insights that we can use in our portfolio management and construction. But that's another story for another day. But yeah, if you think about going back to the doom scrolling, so my version, not Cam's, where it's an enjoyable, positive, high value activity, even if it's not progressing any of my goals or objectives, it's natural that my brain will crave this because the outcome is known, it's easy, it's something that is automatically going to give me some satisfaction. And in a funny way, it almost sounds logical that we would gravitate towards this, or that we would use this as a form of procrastination when we do have a hard or difficult project or a hard or difficult task or something that's complex, in the sense that this is immediate, it's enjoyable, and it's easy. And that is so hard for your brain to ignore, because your brain is always looking for ways to expend the least amount of energy we're trying to conserve, right? For the big, big, big things that may come along that we may have to do, like running away from that saber-toothed tiger or completing a deadline at work on an important report.
Yeah, that is a big part of the battle of procrastination. Your brain is just constantly looking for the easiest, quickest, and fastest way to get itself some form of pleasure, security, or relief. And sometimes procrastination is a buffer to kind of keep you away from the opposite of all those different things.
It's funny. Or patterns, right? Like, we like patterns too. Our minds gravitate towards the repetition of a pattern. Sometimes we don't even know why we're doing the thing we're doing. It's just we've done it that way for so long that it becomes automatic, and there's little mental energy being spent addressing this, and we don't change it because it's worked in the past. However, that can get us into trouble when the outcome we're getting is no longer the outcome that we desire or feel best suits us anymore at this stage in our lives. So let's go back to the book where the author actually gave us a couple of money examples that I thought were pretty interesting. And I'm going to paraphrase loosely his examples here. So he said, what if I had two piles of money in front of me? And the one on the left, I said, I am absolutely, definitely going to give this to you. But the one on the right, well, maybe I won't. So the sure thing pile, this pile of money in front of me is much smaller, the one that I'm going to give you. But the bigger one is the one that I may not give you.
Yeah, this is kind of similar to that same trope of, do I either accept $1,000 from a person today or 1 cent compounded daily for a certain amount of time?
It's true. And the math can shock you on that, right? Or even like, wasn't there a court case like a while ago of someone who like owed a couple cents of interest on like a credit card or something, and over time it compounded to something magnificently crazy in value? I can't remember if that was real or fabricated, but I read it somewhere at one point in the past. But in this book, he equated it to buying stocks or bonds. And he kind of said, to make sense of your options, you have to incorporate value into your decision in order to judge how much that bigger pile needs to be, how bigger that big pile needs to be in order to inspire you to take more risk. So again, it's this play on expectancy and value, where basically if one pile is small and one pile is little, where does it fall on the risk profile? And what is the expectancy and what is the value?
Yeah, I like to see the standard deviation on both those piles of money before I make a decision.
Of course you would. Well, and actually that leads us into the second part of his equation, which pulls in that third variable we talked about at the beginning, which is time. And again, this comes back to behavioral economics. And this equation, he called it the matching law. I hadn't heard that before, but I guess it's out there. Probably a lot of things I haven't heard before, but he related it back to how he described it. And he basically said, let's now update our formula. So if we believe this expectancy times value, if we believe that that is the driver of how people are making their decisions, let's add in the factor of time. So he actually took expectancy times value and he divided that by time. And that is so interesting to me, because the greater a delay to the achievement of whatever your end result is, the lower your motivation, the harder you're going to have to fight to continue to motivate yourself through the process. So even if you are sure that you're going to get a good outcome and your expectancy is good, and even if that value to you is sky high, if you're dividing that over a very long period of time, motivation can drop. It's hard to keep that excitement high because, like we keep saying, our minds are wired to live in the here and now. We're in the present, and we tend to place higher value on something that we can achieve today, here, consume here today, enjoy here today, over what we could potentially have in the future.
Yes, unlike other math formulas and other bits of numbers, you want that time value to be as low as possible to kind of maintain the maximum output of the rest of the formula.
It's so true. Hey, we're in the investment world where time is always your friend and you always wish you could have more of it. But you're right. To try to stave off procrastination, we're doing the exact opposite here of we are now trying to shorten the time horizon. And he's got some quick tips about that we'll talk about a little bit in the not so distant future. So there we go.
Or instantly, if you just skip ahead on the podcast.
It's true.
There will be no chapter markers. Watch it all over again.
This is yours to control. Well, don't they have those little auto summaries in the bottom of what we're talking about?
I'm going to turn those off.
We're not going to make this easy for you. We're sorry.
We need that watch time.
No, my goodness. Well, no, but let's talk about why time makes this hard. So it could be because there's so much uncertainty that comes with future, right? Like, will the outcome that we're working towards today still be the outcome in the future? Maybe. I mean, will it have changed in some way? Probably. Will that even be what we want in the future? We don't know. And that's why I think our minds have trouble with this concept of later. It's that conceptualization. Can we picture it properly? Do we fully understand something when there's so many unknown factors that have yet to play out to get to that final outcome? So yes, time can be a deterrent in this context of procrastination when you think about it that way.
Well, I guess another way you can look at it, instead of using numbers, you can use like punctuation marks. Now is an exclamation point. Tomorrow is a question mark.
I love that. It's so true. Well, and to make this a little bit more complicated, he added one more factor into our equation. And this is the last one, I promise. The author added that how impulsive a person is can drastically change the outcome. So our formula now reads: expectancy times value divided by impulsiveness times delay. Now, if you think about that from a real human practical perspective, it makes so much sense. And it's a clean, easy formula that I love because we understand the implications of each of those concepts, each of those components, and how they can all work together. So that impulsiveness factor, automatically it made me think of the marshmallow test. And this is something that was conducted at Stanford a while ago. There's actually 2 different studies that I'm going to talk about quickly here. The first one was actually done when they took children with a median age of about 4.5 years old. So impulse control may not be all that developed quite yet, but is sort of there. And they offered these kids treats. So they had 2 options for treats. I think one was pretzels and one was animal crackers. And the child got to choose which treat they would like. Now, as soon as they told this benevolent researcher which treat they liked the most, they were told that they could either get the one they didn't want now, or they would have to wait for the one that they actually wanted. And remember, we're talking to 4.5-year-olds. I think the kids' ages ranged between 3 and 5.
Yeah, and the great thing about a test like this is that kids will give them a complete and fully unfiltered answer to kind of help determine how this want now but can't have, no later bad, give now process really works for grown-ups who really think the same way and just kind of sugarcoat it.
Well, or provide a different filter, right, to what they're actually thinking. Well, and I'll kind of quote this from where I found it. It said, the results indicated the exact opposite of what was originally predicted. Instead of the rewards serving as a cue to attend to a possible delayed reward, the rewards themselves served to increase the children's frustration and ultimately decreased the delay of gratification. So that reward being present, and we'll see it in a second with the marshmallow test, it actually wasn't helpful. It actually made it harder to see. So let's talk really quickly about that famous Stanford marshmallow experiment. So this is more kids now. This is 50 kids now, same median age, about 4.5. Yes, we're testing on children. It's funny. But
they can't complain about it.
Well, they were getting treats. So I suppose the ability to complain was lessened by the treats, if they got the treats.
Oh, sure. Don't go in a white van if they have treats, but go talk to a research scientist if he has treats, right?
And he works at Stanford. Yeah. So the children were put in an empty room and they had a choice. And these were marshmallows in the test. They could eat 1 treat now, or they could wait 15 minutes and get 2 treats.
The power of compounding.
Double your marshmallow experience. So in the experiment, the children were actually tested under several conditions. The first was using an external distraction, so like a toy, an internal distraction, so like an idea or a song or something like that internally, and waiting for the delayed reward with no distraction at all, and then no delay. Haha, that makes it easier, hey? So there were different experiments conducted, and it came up with some more findings. And they found basically that, and I'm going to read this here, the effective delay of gratification depends heavily on the cognitive avoidance or suppression of the reward object while waiting for them to be delivered. Additionally, when the children thought about the absent rewards, it was just as difficult to delay gratification as when the reward item was directly in front of them. Conversely, when the children in the experiment waited for the reward and it was not visibly present, they were able to wait longer and attain the preferred reward. So this experiment was important because it's testing how well we can effectively delay gratification and what conditions make it easier to do so. So if we're going to kind of try and relate this to present, if we're trying to delay something, removing ourselves or removing that thing that is tempting us is so hugely important in context, according to this study.
So unless I'm kind of misunderstanding this, are they saying that the key to get what you want and deal with procrastination is just to distract yourself with something else so you don't procrastinate? But isn't procrastination just a big distraction in itself?
No. The marshmallow experiment was all about delayed gratification. So if you are trying to delay gratification, removing the thing that you want from your mind and from your experience in terms of the actual object from your experience, that's what worked. But this is overall talking about procrastination, and we can procrastinate in so many different ways across so many different areas of our lives. So the solve for all of this, the solution that was presented by the author in this book, was to use each element of the formula, that 4-part formula that he presented to us, to our advantage as much as possible within the context of the thing that you are procrastinating about or on or with.
Well, that was a fancy way to put it, but let's kind of get back to the hard math of the problem, because math will solve everything according to this, right?
Math solves, or at least makes obvious all of our problems. So he framed the new solution as motivation equals expectancy times value divided by impulsiveness and delay.
Yeah, so a quick way to look at that would be kind of E times V divided by I times D to the power of N.
Oh my goodness. I think you made it all backwards and confusing. So let's not do what Cam just did.
Do I have to put like a big sigma in front of it?
We're not looking for calculus here. We're looking for practical solutions that we can use on the daily. Well, no, but using expectancy. Let's start with the equation. Let's go back to the equation. Using expectancy to believe that that win is possible, or to believe that you have the ability to accomplish that task or achieve that positive outcome that you want. And then value, I mean, that can be external, but it can also be intrinsic, right? So the author had suggested if you lack a large resonating goal right now, then your most important task is to find them and define them and give yourself something meaningful, high value to work towards.
And on top of that, you'll have to kind of push through the procrastination to find that goal. So you first need that motivation to set a goal, and then you need the motivation to continue the goal, to figure out the thing you want to get out of the goal, and then you can kind of keep the whole thing going, hopefully.
Yes, and going with a positive frame, because that was his next tip. He basically said, and I'm going to read this part verbatim because it was that good, to further maximize your intrinsic motivation, frame your long-term goals in terms of the success you want to achieve. So he called this an approach goal, rather than the failure that you want to prevent, which he called an avoidance goal. People who generate positive long-term goals to go on tend to procrastinate less and perform better. So that's something that you can do right now in your mind. What am I working towards? What is the positive in what I want to accomplish versus what is the negative that I'm trying to avoid? We tend to define procrastination and think about it in terms of deadlines that we're not going to meet, or reports we're not going to get done on time, or the gym visit we're not going to do. But that's all negative framing. That's all not. And he's suggesting that if we make those positive goals, that's easier to reinforce and more motivating ultimately. So the question to yourself becomes, what am I moving towards? Not what am I moving away from? What is going to give me that feeling of excitement, and not something that's based on fear? Even though our body, in our sensations, our experience of fear and excitement can be very much the same in our body, it comes down to how we interpret the signal. Is it positive? Is it negative? And I think that when we have that mental part of that positive framing around our goal, that's starting to give us that momentum that we need to move forward towards it.
So I think we kind of exhausted all the math when it comes to procrastination. We should probably actually start getting into some of the things you can practically do to kind of help motivate yourself. It's one thing for us to say, just set a goal. We've done many podcasts on that. That's more complicated than it sounds, and you need a lot of motivation just to do that part. So let's get into some practical tips that you kind of came across in the book, or things you just made up.
Well, the reason we talk about this so much is this is where smart people fail. People that are otherwise so good, so responsible. Our behavioral psychology, ourselves working against us, is so often what stands in our way. So any better understanding of this, anything that gives us these quick tips or these little actions that we can take to enhance our ability or enhance our chances at being successful, are what we need to focus on. So I'll run you through a few really quick. So he suggested frame a small accomplishment as a first step. So you're pulling it into the present. You're taking something with a large time horizon, time being one of our biggest detractors, and we're bringing it into now, into an action that you can take now that ties meaningfully to the goal that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, this could be something like, instead of just going to the gym, you should just go to the mall or the strip mall or wherever it is the gym is. Just get into the parking lot. Or if you want to save for retirement, go open a TFSA or an RRSP and then worry about the saving later. Just kind of take those initial little steps and then get the list other stuff to kind of work itself out later once you got your motivation and you actually want to do it.
Absolutely. And then he suggested gamification, which I loved. And this is essentially where you're competing against yourself, against your own past successes. And that not only builds your confidence, but it creates a challenge. So it makes it a game. It makes it fun where you're trying to enhance your performance based on what you've done on yourself. And it kind of plays into that concept that you are your biggest competition. You're your biggest detractor. Mastering self, mastering your own ability to kind of handle all of these things that life shows us is our greatest challenge. And again, when you become positive, when you become capable of thinking like this and gamifying, and you have more wins, you build more confidence, which enhances your ability to tackle problems further. Author also made the point that our energy reserves are finite, and we've seen this quite a few times in books about productivity, in books about maximizing time value of money, I suppose, of effort. It's understanding how your own energy ebbs and flows throughout the day and focusing on the things that are most difficult for you at the time where you're more alert and productive and otherwise engaged and capable to do a more difficult or challenging task.
Yeah, it's kind of figuring out the time value calculation for yourself, not just your finances.
And finally, just this idea that you tie the action that you're taking today into a succession of future goals and achievements. So this requires the ability to see far enough down that line that you can predict that the action you're taking today is going to be meaningful. It's not just another thing you're doing today, it's building into your future success. And he called this a motivational chain of objectives, which is a really cool name, but it basically said, I need a string of future goals. I need a set of goalposts. I need a set of measuring sticks that I can reward myself for as I achieve them and continue to build. So now this long time delay isn't, because it's only as far away as your achievement of your next mini goal or your next goalpost. So that's how we saw The Procrastination Equation by Piers Steel. This is a great book. I recommend picking up a copy if you haven't read it. If you want to read it yourself, he's got lots of great stories and anecdotes in there as well. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, and you're looking for a financial planner, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. Until next time,
take care and all the best.
Until next time. Oh no. Until next time. Oh my God, I did it a second time.
Take care and all the best.